I've always had a bad habit of getting myself into trouble, but I've never accidentally walked headfirst into a disaster before. A group of friends invited me to a newly opened bar. Work ran late and I was the last one still on the way. The address led me downtown to an area I'd never been to before. I'd only moved to the city a year ago, so I was still finding my way around. I took the bus relying on my GPS. At some point, the signal was lost because of the large buildings. My GPS jumped around confused about where I was. I've always had issues like this on the rare trip to the larger populated areas. Normally I had someone with me to fill in the blanks before I got too lost. This time my phone guided me to the wrong location. I stepped off the bus and followed the jumpy directions on the screen until it told me I arrived at my destination. In front was a small alleyway that led to a bright red door. I heard the sounds of music mixed with voices. Assuming this was the back entrance to the bar, I walked forward, hoping I could go in that way. The door opened to worn wooden steps with flaking paint. If it weren't for the clear sounds of activity, I would have second-guessed myself. At the bottom was a dim, smoky room with a large wooden bar on one side. A handful of tables filled the rest of the space. Most were empty aside from a few people with their backs turned towards the door. I didn't see my friends and started to think I got the wrong place. Maybe I could ask for directions since I was here. My eyes adjusted as I walked closer to the bar. The person behind it appeared. Odd. This must either be a themed place or some sort of early Halloween event was happening. At first, I assumed he had some kind of hairpiece. When he turned to face me, I stopped in my tracks seeing his face. It appeared bright blue flowers were growing out of the left side of his face upwards, mixing with his long, mossy hair. Whatever makeup he used was very impressive. The sight of the leaves coming through the skin made me internally squirm. I started getting the attention of the others. Sweat started at the base of my neck. The others were also dressed up. Some had horns or glowing eyes. I swear I noticed a pair of realistic hoofs peek out from under the table. I got cut off by a smaller person suddenly slamming into my side and hooking their arm into mine. "There you care, you're late," a thin, whispery voice said. Looking down, I saw it belonged to a short person with long, grey smoke-like hair. At first, I thought it was a girl, but the loose top gave away his gender. My eyes must have been playing tricks on me. His bare feet looked to be floating off the ground for a moment, and a long lion tail flicked behind him. "Barry, I'm taking my client to one of the comfort rooms. Can you ask Mitty to drop off some drinks?" he asked the bartender, who nodded. I found myself getting pulled aside with strength. I didn't think this guy had. I was confused, to put it lightly. He guided us to a hallway lined with more doors. We quickly ducked inside into a small room with a deep red leather couch taking up most of the space. I started to panic, wondering what on earth I got myself into. The stranger sat down, letting out a massive sigh. His face was red from embarrassment. He didn't appear threatening. I sat beside him, waiting for answers. "What is going on?" I finally asked after giving him a moment. "I should be asking you that. How did you even get in here?" he pressed, leaning forward. His voice was so light that even though he was raising it, it sounded like it could be lost in a gust of wind. "I walked in here. What kind of dress-up event is going on? How does your tail work?" I reached out for the tail on the couch cushion, for it to be pulled away from my hand. The stranger studied my face, deciding if I was lying or not. "You really don't know what kind of place you walked into," he said cautiously. "It's just a bar," I shrugged. My words were proved very, very wrong after a knock came to the door. It opened a second afterward. A set of drinks on a small silver serving tray in one of the many hands of the creature that appeared. My body shrank back, the massive shape spilling through the door like liquid. It appeared to be made up of a mess of dark limbs swimming into each other. The drinks were set down on the small table, and the creature slipped away, leaving behind a strange burnt smell. I sat in shock, trying to get my heart to slow down. I was too scared to move aside from glancing to my side to see if the other person in the room was freaked out as well. When I was able, I grabbed the drink, chugging it in one go. If it was poisoned, Then I wouldn't need to deal with seeing any more of those monsters. What the fuck was that? I gasped. Bitty, he's nicer than Mitty. Yeah, that didn't explain anything at all. What about you? I said when I realized we never introduced ourselves. I'm Wisp. He awkwardly held out his hand for me to shake. Joey, I said, feeling odd that a simple handshake calmed me down a little. I stood trying to pace around the room, attempting to make sense of all of this. What is even going on? I mean, that was a monster. Things like that aren't real. How can they be without people knowing about it? I questioned my fear coming back. Do you want the really long and complicated answer you might not understand, or the simple one? Wisp offered. Simple. Magic, he shrugged. I let myself sink back down onto the couch head swimming. Okay, sure, whatever, monsters and magic were real. That didn't help me out right then. I needed to get out of there. I'm sorry this happened. Normally humans can't enter this place. I'm not sure if it was by accident you were able to get in here, or it was on purpose to lure in an unaware meal by the bar owner. He looked distraught over the mix-up. I had the feeling no one would expect Wisp to step up and help an unsuspecting human, giving the lie that he had been waiting for me some credit. He saved my life by some very quick thinking. Can I just wait a few minutes and just leave? I questioned. Wisp shook his head, his hair moving slowly as if underwater. Maybe. There is a chance you'll be able to walk out of here after it seems like you're done with my services. The issue is I owe a few people outside favors. If one of them asks me to hand you over for a meal, I'll need to listen to them or give up myself instead. I would like to think of a way for both of us to get out of here. He explained with another shake of his head. I studied him closer than before. He had slim, delicate features and clothing made of a light, almost sheer fabric. I found my mind wandering over what kind of services he offered. He did call this a comfort room after all. What services? I mean, surely they'll be listening for certain noises. I commented, feeling my face starting to turn a shade of pink. An amused smirk appeared on Wisp's face, following my train of thought. I'm good at massages. What do you think I offered? He teased. My face turned a deeper shade of red as I refused to answer. Can't I just sneak out the back door? I suggested. His face lit up with an enthusiastic nod. He grabbed my wrist, ready to lead. We'll try that. He opened the door and poked his head out, seeing that the coast was clear. Slowly we walked down the long hallway of red doors, the stress building. I stopped when I heard a scream cut short behind one of those doors. A faint crunch came that made my skin crawl. Glancing at Wisp, his expression confirmed what I suspected. These rooms were used for monsters to eat in private as well as to do other things. I tightened my grip on his small hand, relieved. He had been the one to approach me at the bar. We finally found the end of the hallway. It ended in two paths. One appeared to go further inside with another line of doors, and the other led to a double set of doors. Through the circular window, I saw it was a kitchen. There was also a set of doors I assumed to be for some washrooms. We needed to get through the kitchen without anyone noticing us, and we were in the clear. Somehow something had been following us without making a single sound. I suddenly felt eyes at my back. Glancing over my shoulder, I was met with a horrifying sight. The monster behind had been the same one that served the drinks. The body filled the entire hallway behind us. The shapeless mass silently moved the countless limbs and black liquid connecting them. A hand from the mass reached out and pointed in the direction of the washrooms. Wisp gave me a stressed expression, showing I should go inside the room. Dragging Wisp behind me, we stumbled inside, locking the door behind us. The room was small, with only a single sink and two stalls. I waited for my heart to slow down enough to think clearly. Should we? I started. Voices outside made me shut up really fast. My hands flew to the door hands to keep it locked. Do you know what room they're in? The deeper voice asked. Why are you asking? Unlike me, Wisp doesn't owe you a meal. The softer voice pointed out. It's a human that walked in here with his own free will. He exposed himself to us. I can eat him if I want to without breaking any rules. Come on, I'll share. I held my breath, my brain almost shutting down from fear. God, why did I make such a mistake? How the hell am I going to get out here with almost everyone in the building after my flesh? Only if we ask Smile to cook the human for us. I'm a bit tired of raw food. The deep voice scoffed at the suggestion. For another minute or so, they had a discussion of what was the best way to eat humans. These two sounded human, and yet they weren't. I never expected monsters to come in so many different types. Bitty was a nightmare, and yet Wisp was gentle and kind. Hey, Bitty, which way did they go? The deep voice questioned. My heart stopped, and I felt Wisp place a hand on my shoulder. After a second, the voice thanked the silent creature. I heard the footsteps getting closer. Then, thankfully, they started down the other hallway. A knock came to the door. Wisp put a hand on mine, showing it was okay to come out. Bitty greeted us, the black shape pressed against the ceiling. Wisp nodded at it, then guided me back down where we came from. Bitty dripped down, expanding to fill the hallway behind us, shielding us from anyone who maybe see us from the other end of the hallway. We darted inside a room and collapsed on the couch, exhausted from the short trip. Well, the entire kitchen wants to cook you, so no sneaking out the back for us, Wisp said, sounding disappointed. An idea came to me. Bitty seems nice. Do you think it, him, will help get me out of here? I suggested. Wisp rested his chin on his palm, thinking it over. Supernatural creatures don't use money. Our world runs based on a favor system. I won't go into how complicated it can get, but Bitty is bound by our rules to take something from a person if they ask something of him. From what I've seen, he acts nice and does a few small free things to lure a person into asking for a bigger favor. In exchange, he'll take a part of their body and add it to his own. So Bitty was out of the question. His guiding the other pair away wasn't out of the goodness of his heart. He wanted something out of me like everyone else. Aside from Wisp, what about you? What do you get out of this? I asked, hating how it sounded like I was accusing him of some sort of an ulterior motive. He sat back on the couch, not offended by the question. Some creatures don't include humans to the favor system, simply because you're not part of our culture. It's unfair to hold you to our standards. However, some creatures won't eat if they don't. And aside from that, I can understand a little what it's like to be human. I'm not a strong creature. My services aren't worth much. I struggle as much as you would dealing with supernatural creatures. I didn't even consider something like that. This favor system didn't seem overly fair. Because of what Wisp was, it took more of him to repay favors and debts. I crossed my arms, feeling stuck. There didn't appear to be a way out of all of this until it literally barged in. Wisp, I hear you have something interesting, a loud, excited voice said, causing us to jump. The person who walked in made Wisp cringe out of annoyance and disgust. It was easy to tell he didn't think much of the newcomer. At first, I thought it was a guy. After seeing the high black heels, I changed my mind. Gender was a hard thing to pin down with supernatural creatures. Her hair was red and shoulder length. It was a wild, wavy mess that covered half a face. A scar at the side of her mouth made it appear she was always smiling. Jake, how did you even find out? I swear you snoop around looking to cause trouble. Wisp commented, not pleased at all. Yeah, I do, she said proudly. Anyway, let me have a bite. In a flash, he was in front of me trying to defend a poor human from a much stronger creature. She waved a clawed hand amused over his display. You owe me a lot, you know, she mocked with a cruel expression. You're a half-breed. Why should I repay anything when you don't belong to our world? He said bitterly. Her cheerful demeanor dropped, and a dark expression came over her face. I felt chills run through my body. This person was strong. Deep down I knew that. It was like a primal fear awakened, telling me to run. Oh, you're cute. Saying something like that while your legs shake, she pointed out. He looked away, ashamed of the small tremble in his knees. We needed to defuse this situation. I put a hand on his shoulder to signal I would be okay hearing this person out. What do you want in exchange for helping me leave? I asked, preparing myself for a horrible answer. She moved her head back and forth, considering the offer. With some protest from Wisp, she reached out to take hold of my shoulders. For the next minute, her hands patted me down, feeling my arm muscles and studying my face. She emptied out my pockets, looked through my wallet, then glanced at my phone. When my items were returned, a smile came back to her face. "I have a plan to get you out of the bar. I know what I want, but I won't tell you after you're outside," she offered. "Can I at least ask for a hint for what you want?" I asked. "Nope." She crossed her arms and looked away. Agreeing with her was basically offering a blank check. It wasn't as if I had too many options. I had the feeling this person wanted more to be amused than a meal. "Erase Wisp's debt to you and we have a deal," I counter-offered. She shook my hand before Wisp got a word out, condemning the exchange. His eyes grew wet, and I assured him that things would work out. I didn't fully believe that. He didn't either, but he nodded, wanting to try and stay strong for a new friend. "Okay, here's what we're going to do." Jake started to tell us a plan. I was shocked by just how simple it was. I held Wisp's hand for courage, but mostly to make him feel better. Soon we left the room to walk out into the bar area. Fear ruined my stomach, and it was hard to keep myself steady. The place had gotten busier with all sorts of creatures sitting at the tables. Their countless differently colored glowing eyes watch our every movement. "What do you have there, Wisp?" one asked in a garbling voice that sounded like a flowing river. "How about giving us a bite?" another suggested. "Is that a snack or a partner? Can't you do any better?" That last jab stung a little. Wisp kept his head up high, refusing to acknowledge any of them. Jake had hung back to make a grand entrance into the room. She kicked open the door, placed hands on her hips, and stomped her heeled foot so hard the sound made the room silent. "There you are, you owe me a meal. Hand over the tasty little human," she demanded. Wisp stopped, and with a deep breath to steady himself, he started to follow the plan. "I don't owe you a full meal. I'll make you a bet. If you can catch me in the next 60 seconds, I'll hand over the human. If you can't, what I owe you will be null and void." Jake laughed in a way that made her sound full of herself. She agreed to the bet. Wisp nodded over to the bartender, who found an ornate hourglass, placing it on the wooden surface. He waited until everyone was ready, then flipped it, starting the timer. Jake's body was a blur I nearly couldn't follow. Her fingertips were almost touching Wisp when he disappeared in a puff of smoke. He reformed on the other side of the far, floating in the air waiting for her next attempt. The next minute was chaos. Jake tore through the room, crashing into people and jumping off tables or walls aiming for Wisp. He avoided her each time. I knew this was an act, but Jake appeared actually angry. Her cheeks grew as red as her hair when the cursing started. She got down on all fours, bouncing around the room like a cat, being just a millisecond too late catching her target. When the time was up, Wisp appeared next to my side, his arms wrapped around mine. The bar was a mess, and yet the creatures inside were howling with laughter, jeering at Jake, who should have been able to catch a weaker creature. She stayed on all fours, literally fuming. Smoke poured from her mouth as a red glow appeared at the base of her throat. I really thought she might start spitting fire. "I don't know what you did to get stronger, but that was bullshit," she shouted, voice tainted with rage. "What's the matter, half-bred? Can't catch a little bit of smoke?" One of the creatures mocked. "Shove it up your ass, fuck all of you. I already got a little nip of that human, and he's not even worth it," she screamed, putting on the best sour grapes display she could. The creatures glanced in my direction at the small bite mark on my wrist she made before we left the other room. Jake was a strong creature, but due to her half-breed status, she didn't get a lot of respect. There weren't too many creatures in the room that wanted to eat something she had her mouth on, and the ones that did now no longer thought they could snag me away from Wisp. She flipped everyone off and stormed out of the bar. Once she was gone, the creatures started to clean up the mess and writing tables. We walked towards the door only to be stopped by some monsters patting Wisp on the back. I felt disgusted they were only treating him nicely, because he outran a stronger creature. "Come by with your new partner sometime. We'll get you a drink. We had fun watching the show," a creature with a set of horns commented. I felt my face get red, but we didn't correct him. We raced up the stairs the moment no eyes were on us. The cool night air greeted us in the small alleyway. I've never been so glad to hear the sounds of a busy city before. "You were perfect," I said to my new friend and scooped him up in a tight hug. The excitement of being alive got me. I didn't even realize what I was doing until I saw his embarrassed face. I apologized and quickly set him down. We now only had one last thing to deal with. Jake appeared, a smug grin all over her face. "Okay, loser, pay up," she demanded. I sighed, wondering what she was going to chew off. Was I really going to still die tonight? He's a human that made a mistake. "Don't," Wisp started. He got in front of me, but Jake easily brushed him off. Her hand shot in my pocket, fumbling around. Wisp let out a gasp at how inappropriate the action looked. I jumped back, feeling violated, letting her take my phone. She fiddled with my phone and then took off the case. She tossed it aside, not interested in it. She then pulled out the same model from her pocket, placing the case over it, gleefully showing it off. "I fucking love Kamen Rider, but I can't find any merch of it," she explained. "I got the case from a nerdy mystery blind box. I had no idea who the character was, but thought it looked cool enough and kept it. Who knew that would save my life someday?" "That's it?" Wisp asked, stunned. "Do you want me to take something else?" She grinned. We both shook our heads, praying she wasn't going to change her mind. "I put my number in your phone. Normally, when a person comes across supernatural creatures, they encounter them again. You can ask for help, but I won't let you off easy again. Also, Wisp doesn't have a phone. I can arrange some meetings between you two." We sputtered at her suggestion. He had done whatever he could to save my life. That was all. Sure, I wanted to see him again, but that didn't mean anything. "No, arranging a meeting would be a favor. You're just trying to weasel more stuff from him," Wisp pointed out. "I'll just move into his place." The world stopped for a second. I didn't think I heard him right. "Move in? Why move in?" I dumbly looked at him for answers. "Have you ever heard of those creatures that clean your place in exchange for cream on the mantelpiece? My species is similar. We keep unwanted pests out as long as you keep a candle with 3 wicks lit. You won't even notice I'm there," he cheerfully explained, as if this was all normal. I found myself nodding my head to say I understood what he was saying, unaware that made it appear I was agreeing to him moving in. I mean, would living with a supernatural creature be so bad? Jake smirked, thinking of something unpleasant, making me want to punch her in the face. "Are you sure you would be okay living with me?" "My place is sort of small," I commented, warming up to the idea. "I don't up a lot of space, and you can kick me out whenever you don't need my services." I frowned, not liking that suggestion. Did Wisp only hang out at this bar because he didn't have anywhere else to go? I didn't want him coming back here with people who didn't respect him. "Do you think a taxi will pick us up?" I wondered, looking him over. Any driver would have questions about his appearance. He shook his head and then reached up to pluck out one of my hairs. "I know where you live. See you when you get home." His body disappeared in another puff of smoke, leaving me behind with Jake. She was grinning away, ready to tease me over the deal. I ignored her. My friends had been texting me, wondering where I was. I decided to lie and say something came up and head home for the night. I hope I don't need to use Jake's number again. Right now, I really do not want to come across any other supernatural creatures again, besides my good-mannered and polite new roommate.